Welcome to everybody that wants to learn how to code. I'm Carolina. I work at 46 Elks and I work as a developer and head of community. And this is my colleague.
Hi, my name is Rupus. I am a developer at 46 Elks too, and Linux engineer type. Yeah.
Fancy title.
I think I usually use my title as a professional Linux nerd.
Yeah, that's a good one. And I don't know, should we say something about what we do? Because we know different things.
Yep.
Or I think you know the same thing as I do, but I'm more of a front-end developer and a designer. And Rupus, you're...
I'm more of a backend guy with usually Python is my main language at 46 Elks, and lots of bash scripting and so on.
But I think you could say that you're a full-stack developer.
I guess I can do some front-end, but
yeah,
I'm not good at it.
And it's the same for me. I'm not good at the back-end stuff, but I'm learning. So right now I'm learning more about PHP and Python in order to become a full-stack developer. So that's when we're talking about front-end, back-end, and full-stack. So full-stack is both front-end and back-end. And I guess we can dive into a bit during the way what's what and why there's differences. But I'm going to share a page with you now. So here we have a page, and it says which company we're from, and we're going to share this link later on as well. But if you want to visit it, it's 46elks.se or .com and /UPPSTART. And we've gathered some tips that we're going to talk about today. And for this session, it's called So You Want to Learn to Code. Here's how to go about it. So I was thinking that we could talk a little bit about how to know what language to pick and begin with, and what's the process on choosing a language. And I think both me and Rupus, we're in agreement on it depends on what you want to do and what you want to accomplish. And that's the reason for picking different languages. So when I say languages, I mean coding languages. If your goal is to build a website or change something like this on a current website, you could go with HTML and CSS, and that will get you a long way. But if you want to do something more advanced, what could you do then, Rupus?
If you want to do dynamic web pages, for example, if we're going with the web pages, that means, say you want to have people log into your website, or you want to have some form where they can fill in and make comments and stuff like that, you'll need some kind of programming language that renders the web page. So you have a programming language that does all the logic stuff and then outputs a web page with HTML and CSS. You can do that, for example, with PHP. It's a common one for building websites. There are most programming languages, they have so-called web frameworks where you can get started and producing websites within those programming languages.
Would you say that PHP is a front-end or more of a back-end kind of language?
PHP is primarily designed for front-end.
Yeah.
Initially, the PHP stood for personal homepage.
Okay.
Though nowadays they don't use that acronym, it's only PHP. It can do a lot more nowadays than just homepages, but it's designed for homepages.
So basically, if you're a front-end developer starting out, you could go with HTML, CSS, and PHP. That's good languages to learn when you're new and you want to become a front-end developer. But if you want to advance a bit more, could also learn Sass. That's a variation of CSS. And then you have JavaScript as well. So that's a assortment of front-end languages. And I was thinking that we could talk a bit about backend as well. So Python, what could you do with Python?
You can do all kinds of stuff. The backend is the things you don't normally see when, for example, visiting a web page. So that is getting the users from a database or doing calculations for something. A common use case for Python is automating tasks. Say you have some data intensive task, like maybe you have a advanced or complex spreadsheet in Excel. That is pretty much programming, but you could do the same thing in Python with code, and that will be quicker and more flexible than Excel, though not as visual.
So, for instance, if I want to do like I time my time at work all the time, if I want to do that instead of manually inputting that in an Excel spreadsheet, then I could do it with Python, and it could like figure out this many hours you've logged today, for instance.
That's a good project.
Yeah. So it basically depends on. In order to know what language to pick, it depends on what you want to do. So it's always good to know first what you want to do, and that will tell you, when you start looking, it will tell you what language to pick and like what are you going to do with it.
Yes, I would say though, when you're starting out for the first time, the language isn't that important actually, because you can pretty much take any language and just start doing stuff in it, and you'll notice after a while what the language can and can't do, and what's easy and what's not. And then you can look at other languages. I think the most important thing is just to start programming in pretty much any language. Python is a good start because it can do most things.
So Python is a good language to start with.
I would say so, yes.
Yeah.
Though I'm a bit biased because that's my favorite language. So.
Yeah, of course. But how, like, I want to talk about expectations as well. Like, how long will it take to be competent in a code language, or as a developer, or starting out? Like, when will I feel that I've reached the goal? Will I ever do that?
Yeah, the important keyword there is goal. You have to set a goal and know, something that is maybe a bit measurable, because learning programming you're never done learning programming. You always learn, like most knowledge intensive sciences. So it really depends on what you want to do. You can set a goal. For example, you want to create a web page, and then you do that, and you will create it, and then you set a more advanced goal. Say you want to have a login on your website, or you want to be able to post things, right? Pretty much create a blog, maybe, with comments, and that's your next goal, and then you keep on going.
And you will learn all the way when you keep on advancing stuff, you could say. Because I was thinking, I know that when I was new to code, I was like, okay, what do I need to learn in order to become a front-end developer? I need to learn this language and this and this. And I was like, I think that I saw it like, oh, I will learn this language and then I'm done. It's like learning Spanish. But in coding, you're never like fully learned. You discover new things all the time, and you keep on learning. Like, you have been working with development for, I don't know, how long is it now?
3-4 years.
Yeah. And you learn all the time, right?
Yes.
And it's the same for me as well. Like, even though I say that I'm a front-end developer and I know certain languages, I don't know everything in those languages. So you will always keep learning when you code, and that's the beauty of it, I think.
Yep. And for a time frame of how long it might take to like create something, if you automate something, it might, if you have some resources to help you, it might just take maybe a few weeks, a month to create something that is useful for you. To become maybe say hireable as a programmer, that might take maybe, depends on what job it is, but I would say you could probably do it by yourself in a year.
Yeah.
But it might take longer, and depending on what you want to do, it will take different amounts of time. Like game programming is a very difficult area of programming that will take you more than 1 year. I'm certain, if you're not one of the top minds in the world, probably. There's lots of math and difficult programming paradigms.
Yeah.
So it really depends on what you want to achieve with your programming.
So we could basically say that a good way to start out is like picking something small and learn how to do that. And then you can build on that, and you will learn constantly. And even though if you want to become a developer and search for jobs, like even though you don't feel that you know a language fully, you can apply for jobs for it, because you will keep on learning at work as well all the time. Yep. Do we have any, like, I think one thing to say as well is in coding, there's never one right answer to a problem. There's always different solutions to the same problem. But I think there's like more efficient ways of doing things. And I know we talked about best practice before. Could you explain that?
Yep. So when you want to create something with code, there are a few things to consider. For example, you can consider how easy the code is to read. Personally, I think that's very important, because otherwise you will forget about what the code does, and it will be difficult to use it later. And often orthogonally is how efficient the code is. To create efficient code, you might do some things that are very, very unintuitive and will be hard to read, but it will be more efficient. And best practices are probably where both of those are considered, and the best balance between those two. And for some problems, there are pretty much consensus on how you should solve a problem. For example, if you're creating a game and want your non-player bots, what are they called? Bots running around, say in a first-person shooter, the other team that's played by the CPU, they have to find their way around the map, and you have to calculate possible ways for it to go. And there are some algorithms that are pretty much, these are the ones you have some to choose from, and these are the ones you probably should use. If you're very smart, you might develop something else, but it's easier to just use these because they're proven and works.
Yeah, because there are a lot of people before you that have tried and failed and tried and failed and finally succeeded. And they, like, best practices come from people sharing what worked and what didn't work. And like a best practice, this is a good way of doing it, because we've all tried other ways and that didn't work. So in order to save you time when you're coding, look for best practices in doing things. But I would say, like, starting out, don't let that keep you from trying. There aren't best practices for everything, I guess, but for larger and more advanced things, there might be best practices.
I think for security related things, you should definitely consider using best practices. Like, for example, if you implement a login in your website and have users that use your website and input their passwords, you should look up how to properly secure those passwords and not try to come up with your own way of doing it, because you will get something wrong and then you will leak your customers or users
That's
details.
not good.
And that's not good.
Yeah, no. So when it comes to things like security and cryptography, I think we've spoken about before as well, there are best practices, and they're there for a reason. People have tried and failed before, and if you want to do it in a good way, look for the best practice. Yeah, and I think also something that I didn't learn, like a mindset to share to someone that want to like start coding, is that you just be curious and dare to fail, because you're gonna do that a lot. But when you finally succeed in doing something, like that's the best feeling ever. Like I don't know, like I feel like a kid every time when I like, oh my God, I managed to upload a web page. Cool.
Yep. Yeah, that's one of my favorite parts about programming, or maybe my favorite part about programming is the good feeling you get when you solve a problem you've been stuck with for half an hour or many days. It always feels very good.
And sometimes I know that we've spoken about this when we've been working at the office, like sometimes you go to bed and you can feel like your brain is crunching on a problem that you haven't managed to solve, and you're like, what if I did this? And then you can be like, I got it, I have to do this.
Yep.
But it's so like just getting that feeling it's awesome. And I think this is like coding is one of the few occasions where I've gotten this feeling, and it's so instantaneous as well. Like you can see it straight away. It's pretty cool. Would you say that building a network of programmers around you, would you say that that's important?
For me, it hasn't been that important. When I started out programming, I didn't have any friends really that were programming, or didn't have really a programmer network around me. I just learned on my own and read on the internet troll the internet for resources and stuff
So you
like that.
basically ask the internet instead of asking somebody.
Yes.
Yeah.
But I think that probably depends on what kind of person you are. If you like to have friends around you to help you and share stuff with, maybe go to a meetup somewhere.
Yeah.
There are programming language user groups, like the Python user group. There's one in Stockholm and there's one in Uppsala, I think, as well,
I think so.
where they will be very happy to help you starting out.
And that's what I feel like. I'm probably the opposite of you. So I like having actual people to talk to and like ask. I Google things all the time. Like everybody that works with code, Google things all the time. But sometimes I can get insecure of like, is this exactly what I want to do? Or do I want to swap some things and do some things different? And then I like the feeling of having people to ask. So, and I work in community. Like I like to talk to other developers.
Yep.
So for me, it's been important to sort of create that safe space around me. And I have that with my coworkers, but it's also nice getting to know other people. And I have my private projects, and through meetups and through like forums on the internet, there's a lot of Facebook groups for developers. There's Slack channels, there's Discord channels, there's meetups, as you said. There are a lot of tools in order to create like a group of people around you if you want to, that you can ask about things. And that feels like a safe space when you're just starting out. Do we have any other tips? I know like the webpage I shared previously, I have some tips there that I've gathered in like tips for how to reach out to people, where to find people that code. So I'm going to share that with you later.
I did share the link in the chat already.
Oh, nice.
But yeah, there are some resources for learning there as well, which is helpful. The Catis or Project Euler, I like those two because can be difficult to come up with a project to create. And these sites have programming challenges which you can take on in different levels of difficulty.
Yeah, and I think we've also gathered resources for learning, online courses, schools that have courses, or like platforms where to get to know people, or like Stack Overflow. A lot of developers look to Stack Overflow all the time. So enjoy the tips if you want to learn to code. Do we have, I think we're kind of out of time now.
Yes, I think so.
Does anybody have any questions? No questions? It's totally fine just to write in the chat if you have any questions at all. And you should have our contact details as well, like if you want to reach out after this talk. Do we have something else?
No, I was going to say too, the Learn Python the Hard Way is a book I really like. I use that when learning Python.
Yeah.
An older edition.
Was that how you started out?
Sorry?
Was that how you started out learning code?
With Python, I think I read this book.
Yeah.
It sounds difficult because learn Python the hard way, but it's hard as like you have to type this down with your own hands because that's how you learn.
And that's the best kind of practice, like always, like, because this is also like you learn how to use your fingers on the keyboard in order to do things. Huh?
Touch typing.
Okay. Yeah, I didn't know it was called that. I've just slowly realized that like it's in my muscle memory. So if somebody asks me, "Oh, how did you do this?" I'm like, "Yeah, you press this one and that one, and you."
Yep. I just decided sometime to look up what's the proper way to touch type. Where should your fingers be and what keys? And then I just try to remember where everything should be, and then made sure that if I did something wrong, I backspace and do it right. So it was very slow to begin with, but eventually I got quicker.
So basically, when you learn to drive a car, you need to have your hands on the wheel, and
Yep.
So here's the tips that we gathered for you. We won't go through all of them, but we talked a little bit about everyone. And here's resources for learning if you want to start coding. And here's how to find coding friends, as we call it. And here are some contact details to us as well if you want to ask us questions after this talk. And not any questions?
No.
No.
I think there's the 2D Hangout too.
Yeah. Should we
maybe people can ask questions.
There?
Yeah, seems like we've explained everything super clearly.
I think so.
Yep.
I hope somebody learns to code after this though.
Yep, I hope so too. It's a lot of fun, so please try it.
Yeah,
it's easy. That's the great thing about programming. You can pretty much anyone can try it. You just need a very basic computer. That's it.
And like a code editor.
Yep. Yeah. But you can get that with your computer. Like hardware-wise, you don't have to buy anything. Only if you have a computer, you're fine.
Yeah, that's it.
All right.
So thank you so much, guys. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.